everybody to Inspect Point's webinar here on some healthcare compliance. Obviously, we'll be definitely talk about Joint Commission and some of the other accreditations, D&B, specifically probably Joint Commission because it's a predominant player in our industry. Obviously, there's some challenges out there within the healthcare market and industry with fire, life, and safety, or just anything in general to make sure people are safe, right, at these larger facilities. So this is a really cool roundtable. We haven't done this in quite a few months, and yeah, I have some great guests on the webinar today. So and I'll let each participant kind of introduce themselves, who they're with, kind of what they're involved with healthcare and fire protection and just over the years. So I'm not gonna, everybody probably knows who I am, but yeah, let's go around the room. Robert, you wanna kick it off here?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Gavin. I work with Rael Fire Protection. I've been working with Joint Commission inspections for approximately 10 years now. I do some major hospitals in New York City. I used to do New York State hospitals as well. And I'm just glad to be on the webinar and spread the knowledge.
Thanks, Robert.
Hey, good morning. Greg Gumberts. I'm with Medxcel. I'm the Director of Fire Systems. Little background, I've been in the industry since 1996 on the fire side, doing fire alarm mainly. And then about 11 years ago, I joined healthcare. And in the healthcare space, I have a team that does inspection, testing, and maintenance on fire alarms, sprinkler, extinguishers, and so in about 140, 150 hospitals around the country.
Awesome. Greg, we were chatting before about some new stuff coming down with some codes. You mentioned an NFPA vote. Are you on a technical committee, or are you just voting?
Yeah, so as a member of NFPA, and if you attend the technical meeting at the NFPA conference on Thursday and Friday, if it's long enough, you get to vote on the proposed changes in the code. So there were some changes that come through, and I can't speak to it off the top of my head, the exact language, but in the last revision of 25 that specifically spoke to the sprinkler pipes and the we always dealing with the issues of cables and whatnot being on our sprinkler pipes, and that's a big finding during a survey. That language did change, which is going to make it a little bit easier to get around that. So
great. Yeah, I know we got talking. We'll probably bring it up in the webinar here. So yeah, thanks again, Greg. Andy.
Hi.
Yeah, go for it.
I am Andy Buttermore. I'm the owner and sole employee of Flashpoint Fire Protection here in Michigan. Been in sprinklers since 1998. I did 10 years of install, 10 years of service and inspections, and then in 2019 I went out on my own, doing mostly service and inspections on medical facilities, mostly.
Awesome. You're also an influencer on Facebook in the fire protection realm.
I don't know about that. I just talk a lot.
Yeah, right. All right. So what we'll do, again, this is going to be in kind of open discussion. And again, feel free to hop in at any point. And please feel free to toss some questions to us in here. Again, this is going to be, it's very informal and kind of very fluid, but where we're at in healthcare compliance. And again, we're mainly talking about, the United States, because there's accreditation agencies out there that require accreditation, obviously, to get federal funding and all that. So obviously it's a big pain point within fire, life, and safety, and kind of want to hit on that today. So feel free to toss some Q&A out there for some of these experts. So, all right, let's I guess let's kick it off on, recently I did a podcast with the Joint Commission. Jim Kendig came on. It was a great presentation on on what the Joint Commission's up to and kind of their role in a survey. So, and maybe Greg, it'd be nice for you to start since you are more at the facility level versus the third party or outside contractor level. What is your experience? And I know a lot of you have a lot of buildings under your realm. Um, when a survey's coming due, how do you prepare for that? And we kind of got into it with Jim a few weeks ago, but what are some like couple big takeaways on getting ready for a survey?
Yeah, thanks, Drew. We always go with the mindset of always being ready for survey, right? We never know when there's going to be a surprise visit, but of course you anticipate your triennial survey, and a lot of work, a lot of effort goes into the review of just the documentation, making sure every situation that has happened over the the period of time is documented well. And I always say it's always to the period, right? You got to tell the story all the way to the period. So at Medxcel, we have our own internal compliance people that basically use the same playbook that the Joint Commission does. When we come in, we do surveys, we look at the documentation, making sure everything is in place. And that ramps up, gets a little bit more frequent the closer you get to the survey, just to, ensure readiness. So.
That's great. Yeah, I know it's and surveys happen. Is it it's every 3 years, right?
Yeah. Yes.
What Robert and Andy, what do you guys do to prepare? I know Robert, you just mentioned going through a pretty big one. Obviously you're not there during the survey, but what are the facilities asking you guys kind of when you're coming down to that final day or week of them being there?
Oh, they do a lot of their own spot checks, and if they find anything, they'll call up and they'll call up real quick and say we need to get this done immediately. And it doesn't matter the size or scope of the job. It could be something as little as a sprinkler cap, or it could be a tag that just got missed, and we'll get those calls constantly. They have their window between, they're going to between December and May is when Joint Commission is going to show up. So we're on high alert that entire time. And honestly, the hardest part is just keeping within the frequencies up to the more frequent the inspection, the less wiggle room you have. So if you have an annual inspection, you have 1 month backwards or forwards to get it done, but you get down to your quarterlies and it gets a little challenging. And so just keeping on top of that is probably the hardest part to ensure we're compliant,
Yeah, that, frequencies. I mean, and I guess it obviously varies on the different subsector of fire protection, because sometimes you got your weeklies and monthlies on the fire pumps and stuff like that. Andy, what are, dealing with it day to day? I know you've had different roles in your career. Now you're just strictly focused on healthcare. I guess what are the top couple things that you're running into to help your clients out up in Michigan there?
I think my biggest advantage is that I'm the only point of contact, and there's no confusion on who said what to whom, or
right.
There's no lines being crossed. They have one phone number to call, and it's just me. And I have my routine hammered out every month, where I'm going and what I'm doing, and just calling ahead, making sure they're ready for me. And we got a pretty good routine going. And like Rob said, the biggest thing with the Joint Commission are the dates. It's always with the dates. They're very strict about that. So as long as you keep within those confines, it usually goes pretty smooth.
Yeah, I wonder if ever, is this kind of random thought? We have dates and the reporting kind of shows dates and potential barcode scans to make sure people are there. Do you think Joint Commission or the other accreditations will ever go to like actually proving on a GPS location? Like hey, we're actually there on this day with this GPS stamp. I hope it doesn't get that way, but because
Right.
that would make it very complicated.
At some point, you have to have some level of trust.
Right.
Even like I have my reports include the date, the barcode number, and the date it was scanned, just to add an extra level of, and yeah. So I can't imagine GPS coordinates and timestamps and
Timestamp, clock in,
video.
clock out. Yeah.
Here's me getting here. Here's me leaving.
Oh, funny enough, there's a Canadian code, the fire alarm called ULC 536 and 537 in Canada, and there's kind of a whole debate about requiring timestamps for all fire alarm inspections, like time in, clock out, and how do you do that? How do you do that across the nation? So, yeah, kind of wild. Greg, do you guys use a lot of like barcoding and proving, how do you do that across the different kind of sectors of fire that you do?
Yeah, I think it comes down mainly to what we call, we're looking for a unique identifier.
Yep.
If the device has a unique identifier, then we will use that. For example, the address on a smoke detector.
Yep.
If it's a smart device, we're good. Past that, you get into horn strobes or door holders, or it depends on the device.
Yep.
And so that's our approach on it. Yeah, you don't get that barcode scan for some of those devices, but I also look at it realistically. How easy and how time efficient is it to barcode scan a smoke detector? I know that we can definitely get some stuff on the smoke poles to be able to scan the barcode. But again, if the device was tested, we've got the history log in the panel. We know
Exactly.
that confirmation that it was in fact tested. So that's how we use barcodes. But for fire extinguishers, we barcode the location. It shows that somebody is standing there in front of that spot, and then we scan the barcode on the bottle itself, which gives the information, the manufacturer, size, weight, all that, serial number and whatnot.
Yeah, and some of the newer extinguishers, Amrex got it, and there's a few others that come out that they've kind of went away from a barcode to a QR code to actually embed some of the data of that piece of equipment. So I hope, I think maybe some of the other sectors are potentially doing that, maybe in fire alarm, to at least embed some data in there. If you're scanning it, might as well grab it, right? So, interesting. Coordinate. We were talking about coordination before, and I guess, and Rob, I know you brought this up the other day when we were chatting about it, and how to coordinate. I mean, Rail does all aspects of fire protection, but a lot of times you guys might just be on maybe the fire alarm side or just the sprinkler side. So is there anything that you guys do to work with some of the other contractors or trades that, when you're doing some of these Joint Commission inspections?
Well, I mean, we let the customer know if something that we can't do, or we need, like, the elevator company there to, manage when we're recalling or something like that. The customer will take care of it. So I'm lucky in that aspect. I don't actually have to reach out to the other subcontractors, because they're, like I said, they're on high alert when it's Joint Commission, and they'll call and they'll make it happen. If I say I'm going to be here on this day, they'll make sure everyone that needs to be there is there. So they're very very thorough. So that's lucky for me, actually, because I've had it in the past where I did have to do that. I had to call this contractor and that contractor and hope that they were available within the Joint Commission time frame.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I know. And depending on licensing in different areas, right, you're going to have different trades in there. And obviously, Greg, you guys do a lot of stuff yourself, but there's probably certain areas where you don't have maybe the staff or licensing. Certain licensing is tough.
Yeah.
And
to add on to Rob's comments there, when you're looking at that coordination, I sadly have seen way too many times where the fire alarm company came in, they finger the flow switch, right? It activates, they get their signal back at the panel. sprinkler company comes in on their timeline and they flow through the inspector's test. They get water on it. Yeah, I think it activated the fire alarm system. And there's never actually a full functional coordinated test, start to finish, to make sure that it is activating, and it is activating within the time frame. That coordination gets missed way too often. And for everybody that's listening, that's on the facility side, that's an important thing for you to own, right? You got to make sure that your contractors are coordinating to get this work done. It's good, like Rob and Andy, you guys are fire alarm and sprinkler, and you guys talk and you're out there at the same time to do it because you understand the full functional test. But you have to have that ownership on the facility side to make sure it's being done right.
Yeah. And it's beyond healthcare too. It's like any fire protection, especially in because documentation's so heavy. Getting into some of the documentation, why are we still on paper? Why are there binders still? And any feedback there in some of these facilities?
I think most of the facilities that I deal with now, I've switched to
Oh, really? Okay.
They just download it and have it on a file.
Okay.
And have it organized, however they feel like organizing it to make it so they can, produce it quickly.
Right.
I think they've moved away from the big heavy binders, at least from what I've seen, which is nice.
We still have binders, largely in our facilities. They do have access to electronic files as well. I think it's the matter of so many different avenues of data come into one presentation to the surveyor to be able to have it all printed out, rather than, opening up another file, scanning down through the headers of the page and whatnot. You just have exactly what you need right behind each element of performance. It makes it flow quickly. And I think the goal is, mainly to get through document review and get onto the building tour.
Yep.
You are going to find that cable that's sitting on a sprinkler pipe. That's the fruit that we all expect. But get through the document review, and we have seen that the speed through that really increases the confidence in the surveyor. When they come in and they get through and everything is right in front of them, all the answers are there. The spec point documentation shows them what they need and nothing more, not a lot of noise. You get out of the document review and get onto the building tour, that confidence is very high at that point with the surveyor. So it's just that speed of getting through it that I think keeps it in the in the binders. We'll get there eventually when things get, more to the digital age. And yeah, a lot of people are still doing a lot of inspections on Excel spreadsheets. We're still in that boat in a couple of areas. I still see some of the people coming into our facilities that are still doing handwritten documentation. And, for those of us that have been around long enough that did handwritten documentation, we know it's easy. Here it is, done. It's right in the customer's hands right at the moment that I'm done with it. But then it gets lost. There's no...
Can you take a picture of that and email it to me?
Right? Yeah, right. Exactly. Now you got the digital copy.
Right.
But just so many factors. And I think the last thing with that is that when you look at healthcare facilities management, the aging of a lot of people that have been in for 30 years, right? You get people taking care of these facilities, and they've always done it one way, which has worked, it's successful. And it's just that reluctance to give up the books, to give up that paper form to get to it. So just years will solve the problem. We'll get to the digital age. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it is they're just used to it, and they're good at what they do. They have done it for years, and it's it'll transition, I think, just on its own, and it already starting to, right? With that reporting side, how, when you're going through that survey and you're in that document review, how important, and I guess what have you guys done to get through that, right? And I know you guys all use InspectPoint, and how has that helped you with making the reports concise and exactly what the surveyors want to see?
I'll start on that. It's easy. Your guys' documentation is concise. When we were reviewing different software platforms before we actually moved into the digital age, that was one of the things that was important to us, was just a clean report. Because as soon as you put way too much information in front of a surveyor, they start digging. Yeah. And, the elements of performance are pretty clear. EC 235 EP3 is smoke detectors, duct detectors, heat detectors, and pulse stations, right? So when you have a document that only has the information that they're looking for, they get through that, they move on to the next element, performance, and you're good to go. So the documentation has been a huge, huge help for us.
Same here. It's the quick and to the point, and there's no extra, there's no fluff. And if there is extra, you make a phone call and the extra's gone. Right. Moving forward, that won't be there anymore. I had the only time I had a surveyor say something about my reports was that the header page says, Flashpoint Fire NFPA 25. Well, the Joint Commission headers have all the dates, the NFPA 25, 2011, and it's all spelled out. But he didn't like that said just NFPA 25 on top. Mm-hmm. So he wanted it to say 2011. So I made a phone call, and moving forward, it says 2011 all the time. So that was just, sometimes you just got to give them what they want. It makes them happy, and then you high five and move on.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's all kind of the inspect you get to, what they're used to. If they like the paper, they're going to want the binder. I currently email the digital files and kind of review with the customer, and then they actually print it out to a binder. I'm not doing that, but that's how they sit and review. And the more information, the worse it is, honestly, because it leads to questions. The Joint Commission has exactly what they want on the report. They want an inventory, dates, and all that, all that good stuff. And anything more is kind of like a reason for them to question. So, keep it simple, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of healthcare inspections are they're not. You're not doing a fire. You're not utilizing a form, right? It's more inventory style. So you want to inventory. You have to have an inventory of all your different life safety systems out there, right? Now, what is derived out of that is, yes, it's a nice report, but you need that inventory piece, because that's what they're obviously checking and making sure everything's up to snuff. But yes, that report is the output, but the input is a lot of the inventory and assets, which could get super complicated depending on the size of the facility.
Yeah, and
I utilize the. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Andy.
I utilize the barcode in the scanning situation to just help me make sure I got everything.
Yep. Because
it sort of tells you whether or not you've been there or not. And some of these buildings are pretty big, and I've been there a lot. And after getting older, and did I do that this month? So it helps me make sure I got everything squared away.
Drew, I was going to say around the inventory, bring that up. That is a dangerous word, right? When you come into healthcare and you realize you are trying to be concise with your reporting, you are trying to be to the point, you want everything right there, right? Inventory is a word that comes from the Joint Commission standards. It does not come in. We did a search one time. We searched NFPA 72, 25, and others. And the only time that we found the word inventory in those books referred to the spare sprinkler stock, your head stock, right? That's the only, you have to have that in your inventory. And so when you have an inspection that's required by 25 or 72, there is a quick analysis that people will say, oh, you got to have an inventory of that. and I'll look at them and say, okay, so this facility has 11,000 sprinkler heads in it. And we're required to look at those sprinkler heads once a year.
Mhm.
Visual inspection from the floor. You want us to go put 11,000 barcodes on? Right? Who's going to pay for that? No facility is going to pay for that. Right?
They're like 20 cents a piece.
Right. Well, the labor that goes with it, and then the amount of time, because how quick you can scan a room and look at it. Now you got to walk over to every single one of them and scan barcodes. So inventory has to be specific to Joint Commission elements of performance, and then a few other things, of course, right? I don't want to be blind to the fact that, there's not an element of performance specific to the control panel, the fire alarm control panel.
Right.
But we still barcode those because that is the head end, right? So you still have an inventory of that piece of equipment. So it's kind of a dance, I'll say, and we go as far as we need to without going overboard.
Yeah. Other than sprinkler heads, you got gauges too, right? Because NFPA doesn't, it doesn't really.
My customer wants number of gauges. Some bigger buildings can have multiple FDCs, so they have to be individually pass fail each one. So I put a barcode on it, and I can pull it up under the equipment, pass or fail. So they kind of get a little deep in the inventory, but it's not too bad.
No. Do any of any of the facilities that you work with, right? You have this healthcare Joint Commission, any of the other accreditation reporting, right? A lot of times the jurisdictions require a different standard, right? Well, like how do you, and I know we have that in SpecPoint. You could quickly produce an NFPA style report. Are you given and I know a lot of our Joint Commission will have that kind of supplementary NFPA report as well. Do you guys have to utilize that a lot, or is it strictly just the EC and EP within the Joint Commission?
Well, I could take this one. So I'm in New York City, so we have FDNY, which codes are different from NFPA, and so we do provide both Joint Commission and NFPA reports at the same time, just in case. I mean, you got to play nice and sandbox, right? FDNY is going to be the AHA, and they respond to the fire, so you kind of have to play that. You have to not play, but you have to be nice between both worlds, And like something that was brought up earlier was like, say, so EP2, right, for Joint Commission, technically you're doing water flows and, control valve dampers, right? But, if a fire alarm company does that and they mark it down, that's great, but they're not going to be checking for the gauges, right? Or they're not going to be checking for old sprinkler tags.
Right.
So if you come in and then you go behind them, or let's say a Joint Commission inspector comes behind them, they're going to be like, well, these gauges are bad. Even though it's not part of the Joint Commission inspection, they still know that and they look at it. So we have to kind of make sure we're doing both, because if we have the fire alarm company doing it at a different date than us, they'll have two reports, and we got to make sure that, like say they did it in May and we did it in April, right? We just want to make sure that we're both on the same page. We're passing the fire, the water flows and the tampers, but I'm also checking for making sure the gauges are in date, making sure my tags are up to stuff. Like you're saying before about looking at all the sprinkler heads. That's stuff that you have to do, but it's technically not on the Joint Commission reporting. It's on NFPA 25. And so I definitely have to balance that. If the FDNY comes out, they're not going to want to see exactly what the Joint Commission wants to see.
Yeah, and there's literally a button. You produce a NFPA report or you produce the Joint Commission report. So again, I'm giving a plug to SpecPoint, but it does. You are doing an NFPA report at the end of the day. It's just the reporting aspect after is the healthcare side. So
and we do both.
Yep.
So do we do both on that. It was interesting. It's been probably 7 or 8 years ago now, but when we had first put together our Joint Commission reporting, and this was before we were on a software platform, we were using it in Excel. This software, or this Excel document that we had, EP10, fire department connections. We had a large facility. They had 9 fire department connections around the campus. And so when we put that in front of the local, fire marshal that came in, they looked at the documentation and they said, "What's this?" Right? They were used to that form that everybody knew that was in the back of NFPA 25, and which is basically what your 25 reports are based off of. And we had provided them information. This is what we checked, all the checkpoints on each FDC, and so that was too much information for them. Oh, man. All they wanted was fire department connections. Yes, no, not applicable. They wanted a checkbox. And that's fine, right? That's what they're used to seeing. And they wanted to know that you checked it and it was inspected during. So yeah, we still have to provide that just, because you got to play nice in the sandbox, as Rob said. You want to definitely get to the fire department and make sure that they know that you're checking it. They can see it the way they want to see it. So inspect point, like you said, 2 buttons, 1 inspection, right? How do you want the output? I can get my FDCs for EP10 and I can get a checkbox that says, yes, they were checked.
Yep. Yeah. And there's, weirdly enough, there's the different AHJ, Joint Commission's national standard, right? But there's, FDNY, no specific, it's now at FPA 25, 2014, but the state's on 2017. So it's just and then they have their own needs, right? But you go out to California and there's in California, and Greg, I don't know if you have anything in California, but you have, obviously you'd have Joint Commission, but you then have the state California forms. But on top of that, there's another HJ on top of Joint Commission and the fire official is the insurer, right? They might want the latest and greatest 2023 edition. So how do you, it's tough if you're doing it correctly, right? And satisfying all those JHJs throughout. So, all right. We got some good questions in here. We'll get to them in here in a second. Kind of one last point before we kind of get into some of the Q&A is, what, we did we did a podcast recently, or I sat down with Jim Kendig of the Joint Commission, one of the directors. He was great to come on, presented. I learned a lot from it because it was essentially what they're looking for in a survey and how to go. And it's broad, right? It's not just fire protection, but it's broad what they're there to do. But he brought up, I asked him to do this. I'm like, hey, what are the top 5 findings for healthcare facilities over the last 3 to 6 months? And, weirdly enough, it really wasn't fire alarm, or a little bit on the sprinkler side, but we got chatting about this before the webinar started, and it was hanging and bracing on fire sprinkler was the number 1 audit item for what their findings were. You guys have any feedback on that? Have you seen that in your facilities, them kind of focusing in on certain items?
Yeah, it's been nice to see over the last so many years. I know when I first came into healthcare, EC235 was littered across the top 10 list, right? For findings. And it's nice to see the efforts that all of us have done in the industry, on the, facility side or on the contracting side. We have eliminated so many of those things, which speaks volumes to caring for the patients that we're actually taking care of this equipment for, that can't take care of themselves. You're always going to run into building tours that it's blind above your ceilings, right? You can't see that the IT group ran another cable and it's sitting somewhere and something's hanging, or, you're never, I shouldn't say never, right? You're going to have those things come up. They will continue to show up. They don't think you can eliminate it 100% because it's an ongoing thing that you battle. But that, it's just good to see that we have made an impact in the industries and moved it forward to where we're not seeing those findings anymore. We're taking better care of our equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, fully. The other top three of the other top five findings were fire door related, right? And with fire doors, you have the entire facility going through the in and out those doors. So there's obviously a little bit more wear and tear and just people blocking them and whatever. So
It's a demolition derby with fire doors. Right?
For sure.
You stand in the hallway very long, and you see them pushing beds, you see them pushing carts, and they're banging into doors. It just happens.
Yeah.
They take a beating, and that is just something that constantly needs attention.
Hey, Rob, in New York City, I know that there's a big push on fire doors. This might be off to obviously, you're going to find that within the healthcare sector. But has there been a big push in with fire doors within the city and jurisdictions that you guys do?
I haven't heard anything about that. Not that I know of.
There was some recent, there were some big fires over the last couple of years, and it was all related to fire doors. And it's a tough one because there's, like in a hospital, like Greg was saying, you have everybody banging into them, and obviously you got to repair the latches and the closers, and they can't be blocked. So, Greg, how do you guys do that internally with fire doors, or is that done by an external?
We do it internally.
Okay.
Yep. And it just depends on bandwidth,
right?
Magnitude of what you find. So you go into a facility that has significant issues with their doors, we may not be able to repair them in a timely manner with in-house teams, but it just depends. We try to keep as much of it in-house as we can. We have enough work to be able to do it, but you got to have the expertise around it as well and the availability of the people. So,
yep. Last point before we get to Q&A here, and please toss some questions in the chat. But your experience with InspectPoint, like you guys all brought this up before, and kind of the voice of your customer, and obviously you are our customer, so we're trying to listen to you guys. Is there anything kind of in that process of working with us over the years or evaluating us and others that kind of comes to mind with some of this healthcare inspections?
I guess one of the things that I found that is there's so many options that you can give us that sometimes I didn't even know they were available. The customization and the different things you can do. And I think it's important to have your meetings periodically with the customer representative to so you can kind of voice maybe a little, not frustration, but to see what's available or what you could tweak and make it a little bit nicer, or whatever your needs are, kind of clean it up a bit or add a few things. But once you fine tune it, you just kind of set it and forget it, and everybody likes it, and it usually turns out pretty nice.
Drew, I would say when we were looking at softwares, it was clear to me that InspectPoint was there to serve the customer. We worked with a couple other companies, and they were just, I'll say they were too big or too seasoned to listen to what we were asking for, and in turn trying to serve our customers, right, with the product that InspectPoint delivers. You guys listened. You guys made those changes. You continue to make those changes. We continue to ask for things, right? It's always going, the flavor of the day, somebody's going to say, I need to have this information on the document. And we get on the phone, talk with you guys, and you're quick to say, yep, we can get that in the next iteration of the software, or, hey, that might be more of a foundational change in the software. It's going to take some bigger, lifts because it's going to affect every one of our customers. But you hear us. Whereas others would say, nope, that's the way it is. I'm sorry, we can't make any changes. But we're still healthcare experts, is what they would tell us. So,
right.
They weren't listening to us. You guys have listened from day one, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, Drew, I think that I think like Andy said, once you fine tune the process, I can really focus on getting my scheduling and all the other balls that I'm juggling, and I don't have to worry about the report. So, It was very, at first, we had a lot of customer requirements that they wanted that was a little bit above and beyond the Joint Commission, and we worked with you on that, and we got that set. Yeah, it took a while, a couple of iterations, and once we had that fine tuned, I don't even have to worry about it now. I just focus on, what the customer needs.
Yeah, no, it's all great feedback, and I think when we started, and we continue to do it. It's funny, when we started the company almost 10 years ago now. We thought we'd be done with inspection and even joint commission, like in a few years, right? But it's obviously, and John Ryan is on right now. He's one of our expert joint commission healthcare experts. He deals with a lot of the feedback coming in, and there's a big feedback loop, right? And we put out 20 to 30 new features every month, and a lot of that we need that to make our product better and to make fire protection better. So we learned early on that we're never going to be done with our fire protection inspection modules, right? It's going to constantly evolve, and honestly, it evolves faster than pretty much any part of our platform, because we just need to make it better, and codes are always changing, and customer needs are always changing. So yeah, it's great to hear. All right, we got about 15 minutes left. Katie, you want to kick us off, or I don't know who's going to do it. Is there any Q&A out there that you want to guide us on?
Yeah, we got some great questions. So I think we'll kick it off with a couple for our panelists here. So one that came up that I'd love to share is, for CMS, or Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services purposes, what's the best record keeping method besides paper reports? Does anyone have any thoughts to share on that question?
That's why we're here, right?
Yeah, I can share a little bit on that. And thanks for that question, Frank. Glad to see you on here. So, the best method on that is to have those digital formats. As we talked a little bit earlier, it's still tough to say there's one platform. I know there's some softwares out there that allow you to load documentation up and have it all in a digital platform. I have not explored those avenues. We still do the paper printouts, but we have it backed up with the availability of, the file that is generated, the PDF file that's generated from the inspection report. And then secondly, InspectPoint's got a great customer portal. You'll have your history at your fingertips right there. Mm-hmm. As the customer sitting in the facility manager seat, you have the ability to, what happened to this one report? There's always that time that we've sent the report to them, but it never made it into the book. Well, it's at their fingertips at all times through the customer portal. And so I think, having that as the backup is the best method, in my opinion, at this point.
That's great.
Thank you. And then one from Sweet Ann Rocha. So she said she sells PSAs and is wondering if you guys have any ideas on articulating a sense of urgency or need for proactiveness towards contract signatures, T's and C's crossed, so they can get the inspections done on time, not just for Joint Commission purposes, but for customers in general. And it looks like she gave you a shout out, Rob, as well, said you guys used to work together.
Yeah, we used to work together in New York City District.
Awesome.
I wish I had a great answer for that, but it's always a challenge trying to get the inspections in on time and have the customers happy. And hospitals, they're always busy. There's never a good time to do what you need, and I really don't have a good answer. I don't know if the other panelists do, but I'm open for suggestions.
I'm just lucky to have really good customers that just sort of allow me to keep things on track.
I think along with the reporting, right? And there's aspects of our platform, the InspectPoint platform, that you have 10 deficiencies, right? Those deficiencies flow directly into a quote platform, right? And into our kind of internal CRM. So we're great at that deficiency management and holding all those deficiencies, but they flow right onto a quote for that client. Now, some of them critical, non-critical, you can kind of order that. There's code references for all that via NFPA. But that quote goes out, and there's automatic reminders that can happen, right? Where, hey, you're pinging them every week or whatever. So I think the reporting is great, but tying that more on the contractor side, right? Maybe not on the facility side like Greg, but on the contractor side, making sure that they know those deficiencies, put them on a quote, have references to whether they're critical, non-critical, or it's an impairment, obviously. And then the follow-up there. So the deficiency management, I think, is a critical piece kind of to your full workflow. So
I think, one thing I want to add to that, you look at NFPA, and it defines what the acceptable timeframes for an inspection are. You have between 9 and 15 months to complete an annual inspection from the last inspection, right? That's NFPA's guidance on it. This is where being more in tune with healthcare requirements is a key for your fire protection contractors that are out there. You have to know that the window is much smaller based on that, and have to expect that in your inspection scheduling around the school or the factory or the office building that you're inspecting that doesn't have as tight of a window. So prioritization of your inspection scheduling has to happen. That's from the contracting side or the inspection team side. Flip that around. It takes the ownership on the facility manager to know when to expect you. At the same time, they should be calling you if, hey, my 10-day window's coming up for my sprinkler inspection, and I haven't heard anything. I don't know that it's on the schedule. They need to be picking up the phone and calling. It's just both sides have to collaborate. Both sides have to have the eye on the time frame that's required, and one side or the other can make or break the topic. You can have a great contractor that knows that I got to do it within 10 days, and the facility doesn't have to think about it because they know you're going to schedule and show up. Or just the other side, it takes a contractor that doesn't know the time frames as much, and the facility's barking at them saying, when you here, when are you here? I need you on this date. And so, it can make or break on either side, but collaboration both ways is the best solution for that.
Yep. Great question.
Awesome. Thank you. There's one other from Frank here. Can the barcodes on a device be utilized on two separate test reports, sprinkler NFPA 25 and fire alarm inspection, or do you need separate barcodes for each inspection? Is that something you can answer, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, barcodes are specific to pieces of equipment. Now you can put a barcode, and we're barcode agnostic. Use whatever you want. I suggest if you're going to use barcodes, and I don't know if you do this, Andy, Greg, or Rob, but put your own logo on there, right? If you are going that way,
my name on it.
Yeah, put your own logo on there, right? It's kind of branding for you around the facility too, which might go against what the healthcare facility wants, but if you're doing that, anyway, so it's agnostic. It's usually pieces of equipment, and it's specific to that piece of equipment. So it's its own barcode, its own QR code, its own number. With that being said, there are pieces of equipment out there, like Greg said, extinguishers, that have a unique identifier. So you don't necessarily need to potentially barcode that piece of equipment because it's already internal on there. So did I answer the question, Katie?
I think so. Yes. Thank you. A few others here that I think would be great for you to answer. So you've mentioned Joint Commission. Does InspectPoint handle any other healthcare accreditations?
Yes, we've got DNV as well as HVAP, ACHC, and those are similar but a little bit different. And we have toggles for those. So reach out to if you are involved in there, and I've been involved in some of those conversations with contractors and facilities needing that. We have those available as well. So reach out to your CSM or somebody at InspectPoint and we can help you.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I think this one would be great for you, John. So someone is asking which Joint Commission EP codes are included in InspectPoint reports.
Okay, yeah. Actually, right now we actually have all the Joint Commission codes except for EP12 available. We haven't finished development on that one, but currently, right now, we just did a release actually last night where we did release EP28. So that's going to be available now. It can be that has to be turned on by one of your guys' CSMs. But if, like Drew said, if you guys contact them and they can enable that in the admin for you, so going forward, that'll be able to go for you guys too. So I'm still working forward on the one that we still have to get. But other than that, everything else is fully in there, and all the reports, everything will be good to go.
And then someone asks, is there plans to add in the EP code for dampers? Is that included now? Do you know?
Dampers, yep, fire dampers should be available either by selecting that, or if you use EP19 in the equipment, the report should generate the fire dampers.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Do inspect point reports include an inventory of devices and equipment? What about NFPA standards references? Is that one you can take, John?
Yeah, so basically the inventory that gets broken down on the Joint Commission. So when you associate either, say, a piece of equipment or an alarm device, and you add it to the inspection and send devices, et cetera, or equipment, when you generate your report per EP code, it'll actually break it out. So you'll have your actual inventory. And then underneath that, each one will have a detail section. So if, say, in the first part, you have an EP2 and there's 5 pieces of equipment right there, and it's one, say, specific one, it'll list out those 5, then go on to the next one and list out each underneath there. To that point too, as these guys know, as we're always taking feedback and stuff, that's also highly customizable as well. And we can show or not show some columns in there depending on what anybody wants. So it's actually, yeah, we're fully compliant.
Awesome. Thank you. All right.
I'm sorry, Katie. Can I add to that just an experience that we had with the Inspect Point software around that? Inventory becomes a topic all the time, and how do you have to have an inventory. How do you present that? In the past, we had printed out basically our Excel spreadsheets that showed the documents or showed the devices listed out. In the Inspect Point software, if you look at the header columns where it says year to date not tested, one of the things last year that we said, printing that out a second time takes your book that's already this thick and makes it, humongous when you have to print everything twice. So we were trying to eliminate that. And Jim Kindig we had a call with him last summer. And one of the topics that we said was, does this suffice for an inventory? Because we are showing that when it says year to date not tested 0, it says that you have tested everything that's in your database, i.e. your inventory. And he said that's totally acceptable. And he actually raved about how well it was laid out on the Inspect Point report. So, the inventory is specific right there. And it does not have to be overboard in terms of, how it's presented. That was the only way we were able to reduce the size of the reports. But it was very helpful, and the Inspect Point platform helped us get there. So we appreciate that.
Awesome. Great background. Thank you. Janet is asking, do we still have to enter equipment separately in order to have them itemized on the report? That might be one for either Drew or John to speak to.
John, I'll let you take that. We know Janet pretty well.
Yeah, so to have them itemized, yeah. So you would have to include, for example, 2 separate pieces of equipment to be under EP4, to be listed out. Yeah, they would actually have to be added twice. They would differently. I'm sorry, not twice. They would actually then in the actual summary section, it would have that particular equipment with that amount of tests year to date, et cetera. And then in the details, it would still print out the separate tables of the actual pieces of equipment that are on there. So an example being from your inspection, if you have 5 pieces of equipment that are an EP2, it would in your summary say that particular one with 5, et cetera. And then in that detail section, it would print 5. And underneath that, if you have a different piece of equipment, et cetera, that hits 4, but under the still EP2, it'll list that out actually underneath it in the different detail section too, just to keep them on the same track. But if you just have one individual piece of equipment on your inspection 14 times and it's the same one, it will print the same 14 pieces in that detail section and have it still in the one in the summary of the 14.
John, you're on top of it.
I learned from you, Joe. Learn from you. Good feedback from all these guys over the years has been great.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we're trying, we're, like you said, Drew, we always listen and, take all the feedback, try and, to make sure our reports are the best they can be.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, there's a couple of questions about if the recording will be emailed out. We will be sending it out, so keep an eye out for that. And then if we didn't get to your question live here, your CSM will reach out if you're an Inspect Point customer and make sure we address that.
Hey, Katie, I am going to address one of them.
Okay.
Javier had a question on the compliance. And yeah, we got a couple more minutes. Javier, and this is a big one. I didn't really bring it up in the webinar, but the compliance engine in these third-party AHJ portals, right, where they're essentially taking all the inspections, all deficiencies, reporting it up to usually the fire official, right? We have an integration with the compliance engine. There's a few more coming as well in the future, but essentially what the compliance engine is, they're in 8 of the 10 biggest cities now. But obviously you have Joint Commission, right? And you have to do all the reporting and everything for that. But when we were talking about getting those NFPA or jurisdictional reports to the fire officials, that's something separate, right? Well, within Inspect Point, every essentially question or deficiency a lot of times needs to be pushed up to the compliance engine. So we do that separately. We have a direct integration. It's not automatically done, but it's close to automatic that we're at right now. Literally a couple clicks and it gets pushed into compliance engine. It also auto resolves. So when you do make that fix to that piece of equipment or get it up to par, it'll auto resolve out in those compliance platforms. So that's been a big feature for us over the last 6 months. So make sure to talk to your CSM about that if you want to see it in action. All right. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, John. And obviously, thank you, Rob, Andy, and Greg for coming on. I think this is great. And again, we had a few kind of quasi, big points we wanted to hit, and you guys have been very helpful, obviously, with us being successful at this and helping the market out. So,
thanks, Drew. Right. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.